Hi, I'm Jack and welcome back to Real Opinions, and today I'm going to be reviewing Sausage Party, which is the latest Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg film, which probably most well known for like Knocked Up, Superbad, Pineapple Express, so that kind of comedy. Not so much just stoner, but just that kind of wacky goofball, but also kind of dark comedy. Like, it's not, when I say like dark comedy, I mean their dark comedy is always just someone ends up getting hurt, or it's actually just about it's just about a single sex, or drugs or something like that. So it's not like truly dark humour, but it is just kind of like it's a dodgy subject matter, or it's something that you're like, oh okay, I can't believe they went there. They do go there, they go there quite a lot actually. That's how they do all of their comedy. It's just there. That's why I feel like this whole film is that it's all trying to be, look how wacky we are. I mean, the idea with comedy is always to push the boundaries, but I don't feel like this is pushing anything comedically. I feel like it is, but I do feel like it is possibly pushing something in the industry. I feel like that was very rambly. I'll go back, I'll start from the beginning and just kind of guide you through my kind of thoughts on the film. So Sausage Party, I mean, I can't think of a proper way to describe it, in that it's just, I mean, you know, the Disney-fied anthropomorphized style of animation. It's a supermarket, all the food are actually alive, you are chosen by a shopper. That's kind of them saying that, oh, God has chosen us to get to, so they compare it to, like, if you get chosen, it's like heaven, and lo and behold, when they get picked, it's actually like you actually get brutally murdered and turned into food. Like, and that's the setup and also the joke for a majority of the film. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, it's for a setup. I mean, it has been done before. No examples like big examples come to mind. Definitely nothing on this scale, but that idea has come to mind with other examples, but this is like the first time it's been fully turned into a full-length concept. The well doesn't run dry in the film, in that it's an idea that the only limit is your own creativity, and regardless of whether or not you like them, you have to admit that they are behind a group of very creative people, because comedians have to be creative to get all the jokes out of it. And a lot of the jokes you can see coming, they're very obvious jokes. Like, a lot of the food do just play up to their stereotype, like the country, or the stereotype of what kind of people typically use them and stuff like that. And then also there is the joke of how these foods get killed constantly. But then there is the occasional stuff where it kind of takes you a bit. I never thought at any point this is hilarious, but at parts I did enjoy parts of it. Like the occasional joke, not the thing as a whole. Off guard, and it is actually quite funny some parts. I mean, I feel like this is a very rambly review so far, just because two things. One, I always find it quite hard to review a comedy because it's more subjective, I feel, than any other genre. Perhaps maybe horror, just because people rate that on how they get scared, and with the comedy they rate it on how much they laugh. This is very much not my type of comedy. However, I did like that it was animation, and I did like that it went all the way with its animation, which I'll talk about later, but that's why I find it hard. And then also I find it hard because it's a very confusing film. It's a very confusing film because it's a film that you can both tell that there was a lot of work that put into it, and at the same time it just feels like a bunch of guys made it up in one weekend, which I think is a aspect that they really like in their work, and that definitely with work such as like This Is the End, which I think was also them. I mean, Seth Rogen is in it, but I don't know if it's the Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg and all that creative group. It is definitely all the same stars coming back, and I won't talk about their performances because it's just them being them, doing voices and saying, instead of saying I am this name from their different films, it's just the same character put in a different situation. It feels like it's a film that, not spontaneous, but very thrown together. There is a plot, sort of, I mean, but it's very much, like, it feels like it's entirely constructed out of this thing would be funny, this thing would be funny, this thing would be funny, now let's find segues between them. Or sometimes they just put it in without a segue because the whole purpose is to make you laugh, so I suppose that's the thing. I can't see how anyone would go into this film without knowing what it's going to be. It's not really my style. For the people that do like it, I mean, you know, if you've seen the trailer, you know if you're going to enjoy it or not. If you laughed a lot at the trailer, you're going to laugh a lot at the film, because it is just more of the same. They don't use all of the jokes in the trailers. I mean, at least from the ones that I've seen, they don't use all of the... They use a bit of the best jokes in the trailer, but it was... The stuff that made me laugh in particular was the stuff where it was the bits where they push it a bit further. And so, like I said, a lot of reviews have talked about how it goes, oh, this is a crazy film, it goes over the edge, and I think that does well with people because they escalate it. I mean, I know this is very simple filmmaking thing to escalate the tension and all of that, but it's the fact that they get gradually further and further with their pushing like the rating of the film further and further, and it was the bits where they take the sudden steps. That's what made me laugh, because it was the only stuff that really surprised me in the film, was when, even though I knew it was coming, it was just when it happened, and when that, like, I suppose you could call it gore, cut in, or actually that's just it. Actually, it's just a bit where it suddenly got gory. So I suppose that again shows my darker side. But another thing that people have really talked about with the film is its message, and you can't see in just audio, but I've done air quotes in there. Yes, it definitely does have a strong message, as in it is so. I would say that there's more message than jokes almost in this film, and that sounds strange to say with something like this, but it's so heavy-handed with its message, and I can get why they wanted to do that, because then it gives them more of a reason to have the film, besides just the fact that dumb jokes, oh, if we put in this thing, one, people are more likely to like it, because if you're going in for a bit of substance with your comedy, I suppose you're getting it. I would say you get too much of it. And I think because they were trying so much to kind of force this substance on it, I mean, it's not that you can't have a comedy film with substance, the best ones do, but the best ones focus primarily on characters, and then the comedy that comes from that characters, and then there's a message that can be read underlying with it, or sometimes comes quite clear, but it's not all the time very clear what it's about. This one, I'd say in terms of priority, message and jokes are probably equal at the top actually, and characters are way down at the bottom. Characters are the lowest of the three by far, because each character, again as I said, all the characters are just their actors doing different voices, or they are just a stereotype. I didn't really get offended by these stereotypes. I mean, there's nothing for me personally to be offended by. I could see how some people would be offended by some of these stereotypes, like there are the German foods that want to exterminate all the juice. There's a whole Mexican bit. There's a Chinatown, Greek olives. I'm just trying to... It's a long list of... The whole point on religious warfare within the foods at one point, which is just kind of awkward. It's not particularly funny at any point. It's not particularly... That's just not particularly funny at any point, any of that. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, I get the point that you're making, and then they keep coming back to it, and like, yeah, I got the point the first time. It's all... The whole film's about religion, and it's... They kind of... And this isn't a spoiler. At the point... around the ending of the second act, they get to the point where it's the whole point. You can't preach to people. You got to talk to them. You got to like give them some kind of hope. You can't just preach your idea at them and expect them to change their idea, because that would just means that if anything, they're more reinforced in their idea. And yet, ironically, the whole film is preaching that to you the entire time. I just found the message quite draining near the end, and it was actually taking away from the enjoyment and the comedy of it. And finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about was what I mentioned briefly earlier, is that I think it is a good film for the industry though, and by the industry I mean the animation industry. And I'm not talking about the controversy that's sort of had with apparently not paying some of its animators, or not doing overtime or cheap overtime for some of their animators. I looked briefly into that beforehand and at the time that the stuff was coming out, but it was always unconfirmed sources, as in you didn't know if it was just one person exaggerating, or people that were currently working at the studio that just said to people how terrible it was and didn't want to put names onto it, because obviously you get fired. I can't talk on the validity of that, but I'm going to talk about how explicit animation film is very good for the industry, because in America and the UK, animation is definitely seen as just a kids thing, and I feel like this is this is obviously it's just a step into just. It's got gore, it's got a lot of sex stuff near the end. Probably a lot of people have talked that. It's like, it's got everything. Religion, which I think they also, maybe they just picked as well because it is such a controversial topic in America and everywhere, and they just want to make it's controversially sellable. And I can see why they, and it's good that they're doing this with animation, because as I said, animation is always viewed as a children's medium, and with this and Anomalisa, which came out, which was another one that was rated R in America, I just like that they are doing more and more adult animation, and that's what I really, because I really love animation. I mean, I didn't think about it until like the last year or so, but the more I realise I'm enjoying animation projects almost in some cases more than live action, just because you can tell the amount of work that goes into it and the craft behind it that I just find fascinating, and the idea that we could be getting potentially more adult films in that style, or just, sure, you have to kind of break the way with stuff like Sausage Party, but that can eventually lead to more accepted ones like Anomalisa. And while I can't go and say buy this film or definitely go see it in the cinema when it comes out here in the UK, I mean, whenever it comes out eventually, I would say to try and watch it, or some way to try and show support. I mean, if it's not a film that you're going, if it's a film that you see it and you go, I'm gonna hate that, definitely don't watch it. But if there's a film where you're like, I could kind of enjoy that, and you really like just showing that that adult animation is the thing that you want, definitely go and at least try it. I mean, at least. I'm not sure what rating to give Sausage Party. I can't even say I enjoyed it particularly. I enjoyed bits of it, but then other bits of it I was just kind of, I felt more like I was sitting through it than actively participating in it, and it did, just because it just felt like a gang of friends all having an inside joke, which is exactly how I felt with This Is the End. I felt like I was more entertained with this one than This Is the End, because with This Is the End, it's live action. You feel like they just set up the camera and they just filmed for 5 minutes improving and that was it, which a lot of people did like This Is the End again. Just different styles in comedy. I don't think I'd ever want to watch this again. But I don't look on this film badly, I just don't enjoy it, and that's just me. But give it a go if you think that it's something you'll be enjoying.